Hello and welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I draw a creature from D&D and I talk about its lore and its history and what it's like to fight in-game as well. There are simply far too many creatures in D&D's history for me to just ambiently pick whatever I fancy from week to week as a topic for you guys. So instead, what I like to do is I like to use your suggestions for monsters that you'd like to see or learn about, whether they've been in D&D in the past or if they are part of one of their associated books, like the Kobold Press series, or if they're from editions past, maybe even mythological creatures that you just wish were in D&D and you've yet to see come out. So if a creature like that strikes you while you're watching this video, please make sure to leave it in the comment section down below, because I take every single one of your suggestions and I compile them into my to-draw list, which I hand to my patrons over on Patreon every single month. From the 10 most popular, those creatures which come up very frequently in the comment section, I then let my patrons vote on which ones of those they'd like to see in what order. So if you'd like to contribute to the channel and help me make these videos every single week, then first of all, thank you very much, and I will make sure to leave a link to my Patreon page in the description box below if you'd like to join our little community over there, so you can get a little bit more control. But otherwise, like I say, make sure to leave a comment of your favourite monster down below so I can get started on making a Monster Monday video on them. Now today's video is definitely not immune to those rules, and today's topic of Driders was first suggested by Ultimate Mage, spelt with a W, you know what I mean, Ultimate Mage anyway, about 2 years ago. So you've been waiting for a very long time, and I've been weirdly excited to do this creature despite my massive fear of spiders. So let's get started with today's video without any further delay and learn a lot about the creepy crawly Drider. I believe that the first time that DMs had access to stats for these creatures was in 1989's Monstrous Compendium number 2 for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, although the Forgotten Realms wiki seems to have artwork for 1st edition, and there's even a Dragon magazine published in 1988 with an article by someone called C.E. Misso entitled Entering the Drider's Web. So at the very least, the lore for these creatures has certainly been a part of the game long before 2nd edition. So make sure to let me know if you are a 1st edition player or if you played 1st edition back in the day, and if you've got stats from the original release of these games. As I say, all I could find were things from 2nd edition, but I'm pretty sure that there was something playable in 1st edition as well. At the very least, they've been around since 1st edition. We can all definitely agree on that. The Entering the Drider's Web article opens with a quote from Lolth herself, the Queen of Spiders and the Goddess of the Drow. She says,
"Your failure has proven too weak to represent the race of Drow. I therefore sentence you to the form of the Drider."
And that is the absolute crux of these malformed and hideous creatures. But for those of you who have never encountered one before, what is a Drider? Well, they are centaur-like elves, cursed by their demon goddess to be reshaped into new purpose, as a blend between a massive spider and a dark elf. This curse is bestowed upon them by Lolth the Spider Queen, who regularly presents herself to followers and issues them brutal challenges and tests to determine their malice and cunning in their lowest, weakest, or most private moments, and grants magical gifts and amazing power to those who succeed her tests, but forever mutates those who fail. Although these creatures are playable in 5th edition's monster manual, we learn a great deal more about them through this edition's version of Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. In particular, there's a little excerpt called Drider's Lowest of the Low, which says, "Much confusion and misinformation exists about Driders among the non-Drow, but all Dark Elves know exactly what Driders are: failures. They've either fared badly in Lolth's test or displeased her in some other way. Once its transformation has taken hold, a newly created Drider is shunned by its house and exiled from the community, with nothing but a few meagre supplies and its knowledge of the Underdark to protect it. Drow congregate to throw stones at the still dazed creature and drive it into the tunnels beyond the city's environs. If it's unlucky, it's attacked by a roper, a carrion crawler, or other Drider. If it's lucky, the new Drider finds a safe place to hide while its wounds heal. So begins a Drider's life in exile. Another widespread misunderstanding about Driders is that they serve the Drow as pickets, elite troops, or even suicide squads. They do none of those things. They are despised outcasts who live on the fringes of Drow territory, because a Drider's punishment is to live a long life in wretchedness. Killing one would cut short Lorth's judgment, and possibly earn the same sentence for the perpetrator. Driders that survive for a long time can become accomplished hunters and navigators in the Underdark. Nothing will reopen the doors of Drow society to them, but sometimes a Drider can find a place in another community. Someone who needs a guide through the Underdark might not find a better one than a centuries-old Drider that has faced every hazard those tunnels hold. The vast majority of Driders are female because Lolth tends to test only those who, quote, show promise to her, and in the Drow matriarchy, priestesses of Lolth are pretty universally female canonically. But that's not to say that Driders are exclusively female. In fact, the artwork for 1st edition, I mentioned earlier, seems to show a male Drow torso, although personally I've not seen many illustrations of male Driders. I feel like I might mix it up today and draw one such creature, because there are hundreds of examples of what a female Drider might look like. Why not create something that we've not seen for a while? But anyway, I digress. In the monster manual for 5th edition, we're presented with two different options for Driders. One, challenge rating 6 monstrosity, and another, spellcasting variant, who, despite the fact that all elves are magically inclined, I would presume are more likely to be female, as the implication is that these were former priestesses of Lolth, who are taught immense spider-based magics in their worship of her. Because Driders never forget their previous lives, nothing has really changed for them except for their new, malformed and arachnid-like bodies. The traditional Drider stat block counts this creature as a challenge rating 6 monster, potentially wearing whatever armour it still manages to fit on its new, misshapen body from its previous life. Driders have 19 natural armour, which could also be due to the fact that they have the toughened exoskeleton that a massive spider body would provide, and also the fact that they're so nimble and quick that they'd be very good at dodging out of the way of things. Speaking of their ability to dodge out of the way of things, as a result of their spidery body, they have both 30-foot movement speed and 30-foot climbing speed, and their spidery legs allow them to climb up difficult surfaces, as you'd expect, and walk upside down on ceilings, without needing to make any kind of ability checks. They also ignore movement restrictions caused by any kind of webbing, which is important, because although there doesn't seem to be an ability that naturally allows Driders to produce webbing of their own, I say there's a good chance that they are capable of doing so. They have 16 strength and dexterity and 18 constitution, likely caused by a life of hardship and toughened scarred tissue. Otherwise, they have 13 intelligence, marking them out as just higher than the average citizen. Their charisma is a 12, which thankfully allows them to do, I would imagine, some sorcerous spellcasting if they needed to. And importantly, their wisdom is 14, giving them a +2, because they've lived a very, very tough life and I'm sure learnt some valuable lessons along the way. Just like all elves, they have Fey ancestry, meaning they have advantage on saving throws against being charmed, and they can't be put to sleep through magic. Even the non-spellcastery type of Drider has access to some kind of spells, because all elves do, and they can cast Dancing Light at will, or Darkness and Fairy Fire once per day each. Darkness is immensely useful to them because, like all Drow, Driders have sunlight sensitivity, meaning they have disadvantage on attack rolls and wisdom perception checks that rely on sight if they're in direct sunlight or the thing they're trying to look at is in direct sunlight. What makes these creatures quite so deadly is that they have a multi-attack, like a lot of creatures do, but they get to make 3 attacks per round rather than just the 2. They get to make 2 attacks with their longsword or longbow, depending on what range they're at, but they can replace one of those attacks with a bite attack. The longsword deals 1d8 plus 3 slashing damage, or 1d10 plus 3 slashing damage if they use their longsword with 2 hands, and why wouldn't you when you've got a surplus of legs? And their longbow deals 1d8 plus 3 piercing damage, plus a further poison damage, which, although Drow are very, very good at crafting poisons, I personally like to imagine with their new spidery bodies, is perhaps a poison that they manage to secrete themselves from their new mutated forms. Importantly, one thing that I slightly glossed over there is that they have a bite attack, which deals 1d4 piercing damage plus a further 2d8 poison damage. Now personally, I've never seen any Driders who look like they have anything other than the kind of traditional drow top half. Maybe they get vampire-like fangs on the inside, which we never truly get to see, but personally, as a fan of hideous body horror, as I'm sure you've all noticed from a lot of my videos, I'm eager to incorporate this biting attack in some fairly hideous mandibles on my illustration here. Because although what an elf might consider ugly and hideous and mutated might to us still look like a beautiful drow's top half with a hideous spidery body, I feel like this mutation should cover the entire body somehow. I've never been a fan of one type of creature just glued onto another type, because that doesn't really happen, platypuses aside. So I think I will give my Drider some pretty hideous mandibles and make them a bit more spidery looking. The former priestess, or otherwise former wizard, spellcasting Drider, increases the spellcasting ability of the traditional Drider from its original wisdom spell save of difficulty 13 to a spellcasting ability of 15 or 16, and counts this Drider as a 7th level spellcaster, who can cast Poison Spray, Thaumaturgy, Bane, Detect Magic, Sanctuary, Hold Person, Silence, Clairvoyance, Dispel Magic, Divination, and Freedom of Movement, making these things absolutely hideous monsters to fight, especially if they rally around other creatures of their own kind or manage to somehow persuade some other drow to fight alongside them. But it also means things like freedom of movement can be very, very useful to a party who are trying to navigate the Underdark. A once scorned Drider, remembering their ancient life as a noble drow, might be willing to assist the party in making their way back to their city in exchange for revenge on that drow city. A lot of these spells would be very, very useful to a party trying to navigate in the depths. Driders are a sad, sad story. They're so strong and capable. They're very intelligent. Nothing in their mind or memories change after their mutation, unlike a Nothic. They're still the same in every aspect of personality, just shunned, and a missed opportunity by both the drow and adventurers who see them as nothing but a threat. They could be incredibly strong soldiers or members of society, but accepting them would be shunning Lolth's judgment, which brings with it the fear that she would then curse the whole species of drow, causing them to become something more Ettercap-like over time maybe. The drow are too vain, too attached to their elven concepts of beauty to allow such a change, even if it would be advantageous in the depths. That said, maybe it's not just vanity. According to Ed Greenwood's 1991 article, The Drow of the Underdark, for Dragon magazine, the mutation process is apparently horrifically painful and involves channeling some of Lolth's power through an ooze-like demon known as the Yochlol. Now, Yochlols are a monster for another Monster Monday that'll hopefully get suggested at some point. But what's important to know is that they are known as the handmaidens of Lolth, her chosen flesh shapers, who melt the skin of the drow in order to reform them. But I won't talk too much about them, as there's sure to be a video at some point. But it's important to mention that it could also be fear of not just their goddess's flippant mentality, but also this torturous change that keeps the drow in check. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video, guys. I absolutely loved drawing this despite my absolute terror at spiders. But to be honest, I think you guys have suggested so many spidery things and I'm starting to get over it a little bit. Don't get me wrong, I definitely don't want to encounter a Drider in the Underdark. And I'm very, very glad that we're making our way through all the spidery things in the monster manual, so hopefully one day I'll be done. And I no longer have to worry about researching monstrous arachnids. But anyway, if you enjoyed today's video, please make sure to show your support by leaving a little like, little thumbs up down below, perhaps favoriting this video and sharing it with somebody. Anything that you can do like that really, really helps to show YouTube that I'm doing a good job and also spreads the word of the channel. I absolutely love what I get to do here, but it'd be fantastic if we could grow the community, and I can only do that with your support. So please make sure to share where you can. If you don't want to miss a video from me, then make sure to subscribe because I release a video every Monday. And also sometimes on Fridays, but those are a bit more sporadic and I wouldn't want you to miss out on those as well. So until next Monday, I hope you manage to stay in Lolth's good favours. If you see any slimy ooze demons hoping to shape your flesh, make sure to give them a wide berth. And happy monster hunting.